And I think the other important thing, this is also sometimes more for long-term missionaries, is that when you get out of your comfort zones, you realize the gospel is enough. When you don't understand what's going on around you and all you have to hold on to is your Bible and the gospel, and that's all you have as a tool, you realize that's the only tool you need. You're not dealing in the history of the country. You're not dealing in the philosophy of the country. You're not dealing in the politics of the country. All that stuff is over your head because you don't know what these people are talking about. All you can do is give them the gospel. Right. And then over time you realize that's all you really need. Hey, welcome to Whitefield Community Church Mission Extra. And this is the time we kind of take many times to meet the missionaries that we as a church are supporting, sponsoring, involved with. And you've seen interviews with many of our missionaries in Ukraine and, of course, also in Hungary. And this week, it's kind of a bit more homegrown, organic, and it's exciting times, I think, especially for us as a church. We've spent many years supporting overseas missionaries, many of which have not actually come from our church. But this time we were able to send a team from our church to go to Hungary, which is one of the places that we are heavily involved in. And, we have been over many years. Both myself and Pastor Nick have been longtime missionaries there. And so that place and that country are close to our hearts. And so I'm joined here with Erich Dipert and with Curt Fuller, who both were on that team. Welcome. And it's great to have you to share a little bit about this. So just to give a backstory for our folks, this summer, over the years, we've had a camp. We've had this English camp, which was started many, many years ago in Eger, where Pastor Nick used to be the pastor. It's one of the churches that he planted when he was living in there. And we have, over the years, been able to send teams. And unfortunately, because of COVID and the pandemic and all that stuff, that kind of came to an end. But this year, we were able to send a team, and not only send a team, but send a big team, and a lot of young people. And I think this is kind of a historic moment for us as a church, for stepping into this. And so we just want to talk a little bit about how that is and how that happened and the why and the wheres and all of that. And I just wanted to start with you, Erich, because this is the young adults, we're kind of the driving force. Like, you got them on board, and I'm not sure how you did it, but you did it. But I just want to kind of let's just talk about what's been happening in our young adults ministry and just what the Lord's been doing in it, and just how you guys got around to making the decision, hey, we're going to go to this English camp way across the ocean and teach English to a bunch of people we don't know. And hey, let's go. And it's going to be no air conditioning. It's going to be hot. The food is going to be bad, but we're going to do it, and we're going to go take the love of the Lord there. So kind of just bring us into the, up to date as how that all came about.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It actually started with a conversation when our young adult group was very small. There was kind of gotten down to a couple of people left, and we were starting to get to a point where they were starting to share their thoughts and feelings on a lot of stuff. And we started talking about the possibility of going on a mission trip. And so we talked to Pastor Nick, and he really just kind of helped just spur this on and get this going. And I kind of thought that this would be a pretty small group because there were only a couple people, but the young adult ministry actually has exploded in the last 6-7 months now. And as these people started coming into the group, it was very exciting to see how excited they were about this opportunity to be able to serve. And I kind of honestly had some expectations that the excitement, kind of like, hey, do you want to go on this adventure? And everybody's excited in the beginning as they pack their bags, and then they realize, oh, I have this or I have that. But the number of people grew and grew to the point where it was a fairly large team. So there were 11 of us that flew over, and David was there, met us there as well. And we had some friends from England that visited us as well, or came as well. So it's just it really has grown a lot, and this trip, I think, has really helped build a lot of intimacy in that group of people in coming together and being able to serve together.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure our viewers know you are the leader of the young adults ministry, but this is not your first rodeo as far as missions go for you or your wife. Just bring us up to date with that.
My wife and I actually met going overseas to teach English in schools. She was going to Hungary and I was going to the Czech Republic, and we met in that process. And she served in a town in Dunaújváros, which is in southern Hungary or middle Hungary, and I served in Prague. So, and then we got married and had kids and served a little bit longer in Prague, and it was we've done that. And so this English camp isn't exactly new for us. We've actually served on a few English camps in the past. It was very exciting to see how similar it was to when we did it 20 something years ago, and how different it was at the same time. There are a lot of really neat differences in how things have changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah. And for you, Curt, I mean, I just wanted to talk about, we were just talking about this interview, and you were just sharing with me how the Lord got you on this team, because you're not part of the young adults group.
Not a bit.
No, you're, and Curt is
not that I'm opposed.
He's our audio video director here at the church, so he's on the staff, and so we were talking about this in staff, and so just kind of tell us about how you got to be a part of this team.
Sure. Well, unlike Eric, I am a complete and utter noob when it comes to missions. I've never done it. Always said, I'll do it with my boys eventually. I don't know what it was. I was sitting in staff meeting, and the first time you guys mentioned it, before I even knew the young adults were going at all, I was just like, something just hit me, and I'm like, I think I have to go on this. And it didn't go away, and so I was pretty confident after a while that God was just speaking to me, and I just needed to go. I didn't know why. I know why now, but I didn't know why then.
Yeah, no, because when you told me that, I remember standing in the kitchen. It reminded me of when I first went on the mission field. Like, people are always ask you, how did you go on the mission field? And they say, well, it just is a moment like that where you're just hearing stuff and like, I just need to go.
Yep.
Like, I had no support. I just went. I didn't know how long I was going to stay. And 21 years later, I finally came back to the United States. Or I would say I didn't come back I came to the United States now as a missionary, in a sense, to this country. So it was like, so that was very intriguing. And so let's talk about a little bit about some of your first impressions as this team arrives in Hungary and Budapest and at the camp, and just kind of like, and I know you guys kind of speaking for all of the group, and I got to talk with a couple of them on Sunday morning. They were just so, you could tell they were so super excited about what happened.
Well, on that point, we should probably mention that we will have the whole ministry team will be there after church on Sunday on the 21st.
Yeah. So if you're watching this before August 21st of 2022, we will be having a meeting here at 12:30, and all of the team will have a chance, and we'll have some photos and things like that. You'll get to hear from them as well. But so let's just talk about first getting all these people across, and then arriving in Budapest, and then arriving in the camp, and some first impressions.
When we landed, it was 105 degrees. So it was the hottest they've had in Budapest in forever. And there's no air conditioning, I think, in the entire country, honestly. So we were really, really hot. It was a very long flight. So
yeah, it is a long flight.
It is a very long flight. So we, I don't know, it felt like we were up for 2 days straight by the time we actually got settled in Eger. But I got to give props to Eric for all the work that he did in advance, marshaling all this. All I pretty much had to do was show up and, just survive the flight. But Eric had to marshal an entire team of people who'd never done this before. So.
Yeah, it was. It's funny. Nick said he didn't want to pray for health and safety, but effectiveness, and so we did. But the secret is some of us did pray for health and safety because we thought COVID was going around. We were a little worried about a few people, like, are you going to make it? And it went really smoothly. I think it's because we prayed for health and safety. But it also was very effective. And that was really good. Yeah, I think the team, everything went so smoothly, but one of the blunders, the classic blunders, aside from getting in a land war in Asia, is that they have, none of them have really been overseas before, aside from my family, and I would be asleep on the plane, and I'd wake up and I'd look over, and they'd be watching movies.
I was just thinking that too.
And so by the time we landed, it was at least 100, maybe not 105, but if it was 105,
it was 105. I looked
crazy.
at the weather. It was sad.
It was very warm, and they hadn't slept all night, and they're very young, but not that young. So there was a lot of kind of zombie walking. So.
I'm sure. Yeah, that taking it all in. So you guys get to the camp, and Lindsay Kuhn is one of the people that we actually support as a church. Mm-hmm. And if you're a member of our church, you can find her up on our website. And so she kind of meets you at the airport. She gets you there to Eger. And so, kind of tell me what did an average day look like for the camp?
So we started every morning with kind of an internal staff time, prayer, worship, somebody led worship. And this actually gets to one of the things that hit me. One of the hardest is that I found a bunch of opportunities at the camp that I didn't expect that hit right in my skill set. Yes. I was able to run the sound, set up the sound, which I didn't even expect there would be any sound, but then we had speakers and a soundboard, and I was able to run that. I was able to, I was asked to lead worship several times, which was great for me and my guitar. And then the young adults David jumped right in on keyboard, and Kitty Dipert jumped in with me to add another vocal.
Yeah.
So it was. I am super glad that we had those times. It was just a half an hour to try to level set what the day was going to be, what we were in for, and somebody would do a devotional every day, and it rotated who, not against their will. Everybody was volunteer on that, but so it was a great way to start the day.
Mm-hmm. Then it would be Breakfast of Champions, followed by 3 hours of teaching, which honestly was very interesting, I think, as far as first impressions. I think a lot of us, our first impression of the students was they were like, eh. But we found out at the end that Kurt had mentioned this at the end, that no, they actually really got a lot out of this. It was just kind of a cultural difference in how they reacted. But we had 3 hours of teaching, and then followed by a lunch of champions.
Just full disclosure, the food is bad. They're going to improve it next year. They promised us, but it's not going to be 5-star.
That's what makes makes us all stronger. It doesn't kill you; it makes you stronger.
Right.
And so then after that we'd have some game time in the afternoon, and then I think one of the most effective times was the evenings. We had they called them life stories, where different missionaries would come up front and tell their life stories. That was great for me. I learned a lot about the young adults that I didn't know. But it was really a vulnerable time of being able to tell people, who I was, who I am, where I'm going, and how Christ has worked in my life. And that was really good. And in fact, Sarah was telling me before I came to this meeting, said, we had this really great opportunity with this girl, Sophie. I sat down with her and I said, hey, you just heard these life stories. What's your life story? And she said it's not a very Hungarian thing to do, to share that kind of thing. She didn't want to burden everybody, but she started to share. And as she did, Mason came by and Violet came by, and Mason sat down and at some point shared Christ with her in that situation. And then Violet prayed for her. So, and then we had a couple of students that came to church on Sunday afterwards, all built on hearing these life stories and feeling like they could connect with us and know who we were. So
on that note, it's important to know about the life stories that some of the camp is mandatory for the kids and some of it's optional. And so the life stories were a completely optional part of the camp. Not a single kid had to come to those. I would say probably 2/3 of the camp did.
Yeah, at some point.
To each one. And, so they heard some very vulnerable life stories, as did we all. It's like, that was where I first started to really understand who these young adults were that we had, that had come over here and really and that made it just that much easier to spend time with them after camp, right? Which was great.
Yeah, and just a bit of history on that. We started those English camps way back in the early 2000s, or probably late 90s, and we found it just ended up being one of the most effective outreaches. And it became so effective when we were first in Debrecen that high schools were sending their kids to these summer programs. And the reason why is because you would have 3 hours of teaching in the morning. And so there was a structure. We had proper English teachers that were going there to teach, but then we'd have the games, and then we'd have this, this immersion. We'd bring in these, bring in Americans, bring in native speakers, and they would get immersed in that language. And it got to be that, there was a lot of high attendance, even just from the high schools in the region, like, you need to go to this English camp, and it was a very, very effective way of reaching the young people in that area. And we just kind of continued. Yeah, and of course, COVID and the pandemic kind of stifled, because you said that they used to have like 150 or so over, per year, and now they were down to like 50.
Yeah, they're down to 50 now. And yeah, I had talked to one of the students about an English camp they'd been to, or English camps that they'd been to around there, that where there were no native speakers. And in many cases, most of my students, we were the first native speakers they'd ever met, which is really kind of fascinating, because they had a lot of colloquialisms that you're like, where did you learn this? And they're like, YouTube and video games. In fact, Curt actually met somebody in line.
Yeah.
I'll let him tell this story.
Yeah,
that was hilarious. It's another one of these. I would never have expected this. So I am a gamer. So I play a lot of online esports with my kids. It was a good way to connect with them, and that got out at camp. And one day I'm standing in line, and kind of the cool kids were in front of us, and one of them turns around and he says, "You used to stream on Twitch, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "I saw you. I saw one of your streams." And then the next thing I know, I'm at the cool kids table, and we're talking esports, and just a great opportunity. In fact, 4 of them actually asked for my Discord so they could keep up, and maybe we could play games across the pond now and then. So, it's up to me to make that happen, which I still try to remind myself that every day, that I need to shepherd those contacts. But
yeah, because you're gonna become like some of my kids. My kids are playing on multiple time zones.
Yeah.
Because everybody on 9 hours away, there.
Yeah.
My kids are at 5 a.m. yelling and screaming over the computer.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to connect.
I think that what I was going with kind of the beginning of that was that they go to these other camps where they don't know anybody, they don't have any native speakers. They come to this camp that's been decimated by COVID, and they're going to go home and their parents are going to say, "Well, what happened?" And they say, "Well, we had 2 native speakers to 6-7 students, and there was a girl there that was 12 years old from England that hung out with us the whole time, and a 15-year-old and an 18 and a 19-year-old that are the same age as me, that spent all their time with us." We also made a pretty good effort, I'd say, in all these breakfasts of champions and lunch and dinner of champions, to not, as they said, to not bubble, and spent a lot of time with these kids, where we would go and we'd sit with them at breakfast and lunch and dinner, and try to build those relationships that. Sarah's actually put together photographs with all their names, so that if we're able to go back next year, that we're able to say hi, and Marcel's, wow, you remember who I am. So just building those relationships.
And I will say, some of us were better at that than others. Eric was extremely effective at. I didn't see him at the same table twice. I think he probably talked to every kid in the camp.
It always felt like middle school. It was like, oh, they're going to reject me.
That's what stopped me, and that's what I finally realized at the end of the camp, is that these kids are too polite to say no. Really, if you walk up with your tray and put it down and say, "Can I sit here?" they're not going to say no, and then they're just going to talk to you. The few times I did that, one of the kids from my group told me how the entire Hungarian school system works, and let me tell you, it's very, very different from here.
Oh, it is.
So it was fascinating. I'm just like, so we had a it's actually not hard, but we're trained to think it's hard. It's just so not. So if you end up going, just sit down and talk to them. They're great.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of been dancing around this subject a little bit, but somebody would push back and say, well, why spend all this money to go to some faraway country and, to a bunch of kids when you could spend all that kind of money and invest it in just going across the street and doing ministry here in the United States? Like, what's the point? How would you answer that question?
Nick actually addressed this with our group in the very beginning. We had one of our students, one of the young adults actually had a very similar kind of argument about that. And Nick came and the thing he said was very impactful. He said, Europe is the crossroads of the world. You have people from Africa and Asia and all over that come there to go to school and to work, and then eventually they go back. They don't all go back, but some of them do. So, when you make a relationship with somebody who's Asian who goes back to Asia, you now are able to spread the love of Christ, all over the world. Now, all of the kids that we had were all Hungarian, so we're not actually touching those people, but all of the students that we are working with at this camp, those that come to Christ, they're going to meet Asians and Africans and people from all over the world that are coming, and then they go back to where they're from, and so it's a great place to kind of to be able to do that.
From my perspective, I came across this question as well. It's kind of funny that you guys did too in young adults. In my case, it was phrased as VBS. If you're going to do VBS, why not do it here? And first of all, if you want to do VBS, please. There's never enough VBS workers right here. But this is not VBS, right? It's something completely different. This camp is a place where the Hungarian parents send their children because we have such a high concentration of native speakers, just like you were saying. If we didn't, they wouldn't be sending their kids, because the point is they recognize they need to learn English. They need to be able to speak it fluently to kind of thrive in the world, in Europe. So that's great. So if we weren't sending native speakers, the parents wouldn't be sending their kids. From the kids' perspective, it's not school. They come to this camp and they're not scheduled from 8 in the morning to 8 at night with English lessons, right? They're just more surrounded by immersive English teaching, right? We're interested in their lives. Not one of them said they didn't want to come back. So the kids love to come back. The parents recognize the value of it, and in all that, we have a chance to spread the gospel throughout Europe, right? I don't know many opportunities that you're going to have to make that kind of a broad impact.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, just the very fact that, and from my experience, especially with these English camps, one of the reasons they're so effective for bringing teams over, because many times, over the years we've had mission teams come over to Hungary, and many times you feel like you're just babysitting a bunch of high school students and trying to herd cats and keep them from doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And you're trying to do street outreach, and trying to do drama groups, and those have all been effective, and they were certainly effective in the late 90s after the fall of communism, and people just gobbled up. But as into the 2000s, things kind of changed. They didn't want to stop on the street and watch you do a mime for 10 minutes or anything like that, do a drama or anything like that. They just wanted to keep getting to where they were going, because consumerism, Western values, and everything had flooded the country. And so one of the reasons, the English camps are so effective is that I could bring a team of high schoolers and say, or young adults or people, and say, all I want you to do is to speak English. Can you do that? And I want you to share your life with them, and I want you to just tell them there's nothing forced. Just come and share your life, share the Lord, build a relationship, and it's so impactful on these people that they keep coming back every single year. Yep. And the blessing on both sides is just so amazing. And I think the other important thing, this is also sometimes more for long-term missionaries, is that when you get out of your comfort zones, you realize the gospel is enough. When you don't understand what's going on around you and all you have to hold on to is your Bible and the gospel, and that's all you have as a tool, you realize that's the only tool you need. You're not dealing in the history of the country. You're not dealing in the philosophy of the country. You're not dealing in the politics of the country. All that stuff is over your head because you don't know what these people are talking about. All you can do is give them the gospel.
Right.
And then over time you realize that's all you really need.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's an amazing eye-opening experience that, most missionaries will tell you that, over time, they realize the gospel, it is the power unto salvation. And sometimes it takes moving across a large puddle and being 14 hours in a plane and going someplace where you're totally immersed in a foreign environment to realize that. And it's life-changing. It just really is life-changing.
Yeah, and I would say if for me, the discomfort was part of the life change, really. Yeah. I was uncomfortable from the second I got off the plane, but I loved every minute of it. It's crazy. I would never have thought that I would say that, but I didn't really want to leave, honestly. We got lives and we got to live them, and I do love working at the church. Don't hear me saying that, but I just wanted to stay there because I really kind of fell in love. In fact, I fell in love with the Hungarian people so much I actually started the Duolingo course. I'm going to see if I can recognize some words by next year.
Yeah, no, that's so. Kind of, as we kind of bring this to a close, kind of like some closing thoughts, some like highlights or some one like takeaway that. If somebody asked you about the trip, like this is kind of would sum it up for you, whether it's a conversation you had or it's a moment or just maybe an overall experience that you want to share.
I think about this quite a bit. One of the young adults that first started coming to our group 7 months ago or so, we were talking about in one of the studies about what do you want to be when you grow up? What was your thing? And she didn't have an answer. She felt like she was kind of had a numb childhood, and she's completely on fire about this camp, and this trip has really just helped her just come alive. And it's so exciting to see all of these young adults in their different places in life and all their struggles to just be excited about this actually matters and wanting to go back because they realize the impact that they made and they're making. And that's kind of my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, besides the fact that I've never really been to a foreign country outside of work. I always had, a big buffer between me and the people there. It was the buffers were ripped away, and I, just really got to see a completely different culture and start to understand that, which was great. But I think the biggest thing for me was those life stories. I just to listen to people's past, and you kind of think, well, I'm the only one that's got a huge pile of brokenness over my shoulder, right? And then you realize, no, I think most people are carrying that, and you'll never know it just from walking around. I mean, all the kids at camp, it's like you start to look at people with different eyes and realize, yeah, and that's the point. We're all really broken, and we all really need Jesus, because that's the only way we're going to even get close to fixing it in this life and permanently fixing it afterwards.
Yeah, no, that's a great takeaway. That's a great takeaway. That's amazing. Thank you for joining us on this trip, Erich and Curt, and I hope you kind of got the takeaway of the impact that people can have, you can have, of being a missionary, going on a short-term mission, or whatever that might be. That leaving the country, leaving your comfort zone, and how much the Lord can speak to you and draw you together with others in a common goal for the gospel. And we're hoping this is the beginning of many such trips, and we're trying to plan and look to how we can go, even from here, from Colorado, and go to places, Mexico, wherever it might be, or even cities around here and get involved in being part of the mission of God, and just kind of sometimes letting that discomfort get us out of ourselves and super focused on what the Lord wants us to do. So have you interested in any of our other ones, especially our Ukraine interviews that we've been doing, whitefieldschurch.com, you can find them there, or YouTube, or any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Of course, like and review. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. Certainly helps, in the almighty algorithm. When people are asking about, hey, they type in Hungary, and guess what? We show up and we can talk to them about what it means to go and teach a bunch of kids in Hungary about the Lord and the impact that'll have. So we really appreciate you joining us today, and may God bless you.